Um, Over the course of the past few decades, Allen West has had many titles bestowed upon him, among them Lieutenant Colonel, United States Representative, Dad, and Scourge of the Far Left. He rose from humble beginnings in Atlanta, where his father instilled in him a code of conduct that would inform him for the rest of his life, and I think that's been evident to those of you who have followed Colonel West. Throughout his years leading troops, raising a loving family, serving as a congressman in Florida's 22nd District, and emerging as one of the most authentic voices in conservative politics, Allen West has never compromised the core values on which he was raised: family, faith, tradition, service, honor, fiscal responsibility, courage, and freedom. Please give a warm Steamboat welcome to a great American patriot, Lieutenant Colonel Allen West.
Thanks a lot. I want to thank Rick and Jennifer for bringing me out here. This is truly an honor. I also want to thank the chairman of the Colorado Republican Party, Chairman Ryan Call. I don't know, where are you, Chairman? All right, Stan, thank you so much for being here. And some really special people who have put up with the West family for the past 5 days. That's John Kuhn, Todd and Heather Golnick of Steamboat Premier Concierge Services. I don't know where you guys are because this light is really bright. Thank you so much, guys. You're part of our family. God bless you all. You know, it was very fortuitous to come out here. John took me out this morning. I came from sea level. And when we left to come out here back on Tuesday, the high in South Florida was 83 degrees. It's been a little bit of a shock. And of course, today, John takes me up on a hike about 1.9 miles. I don't know what y'all call the mountain on the other side of Howelson Hill, but it's pretty high. And, you get almost to the top, and John says, well, come on, let's run for 2 or 3 minutes. And it's that point in time when you wish that you had your concealed weapons license and your gun here with you. But John, if you ever try something like that down in Florida, I will shoot you. But the thing is, I'm here to talk about what the Steamboat Institute stands for and really what America stands for. You know, Jennifer has an incredible list of 5 principles, but we need to understand, how do we take these principles? How do we turn these principles into the policies that are going to promote the future, the secure future for the United States of America? Because the most important thing that each and every one of us should be thinking about is, how do we make sure that we pass on a better America for our children and our grandchildren? And as we sit here now, we cannot be that first generation of Americans that leaves something less for our children and grandchildren. So if you will just indulge me for about 25 minutes, and then you get to have my very charming and intelligent wife up here, who will probably embarrass me because she has a PhD and she uses really big words to, make me shut up. But let's talk about, really, how do we take these principles and make them into the policies that will be bettering for our future? The first principle that Jennifer talks about is limited government. And there's a great quote about limited government. The 2 enemies of the people are criminals and government. Now, so let us tie the second down with the chains of the Constitution, so the second will not become the legalized version of the first. That was said by Thomas Jefferson. And when you go back and you understand, when Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, if you read the entire Declaration of Independence, it was a list of grievances that we had against an onerous, invasive, and intrusive government. And what James Madison, John Jay, and Alexander Hamilton did with the United States Constitution, they realized that they did not want to have an America. They did not want to establish a constitutional republic where they had that exact same invasive and intrusive government. So they put restraints on the federal government. And that is really what the Constitution is all about. So that here in America, it is about that thing that is so important that Jefferson wrote about, the unalienable rights that come to you from your Creator of life, of liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But see, what happens when we get away from understanding that sense of limited government? We all of a sudden look up at Washington, D.C., and we see a bureaucracy here that's grown so big, ladies and gentlemen. See, when there's a crisis that comes up in our nation, the first thing that so many people decide to do, we got to create a new government agency. Think about what has happened in the since 1970s. We had the Saudi oil embargo crisis. How many people remember that? The even odd numbers on your license plate, which meant which day you could go and get gasoline. Well, the government all of a sudden decided, well, we need to create a new agency. We'll call it the Department of Energy. How many people have ever read what the mission statement is for the Department of Energy? It's to make the United States of America energy independent. That's the mission statement. Now, how well has that worked out for us? When you think about in the late 1970s, we had the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. Then someone decided that we will separate out the Department of Education and make it its own standing government agency. Now think about back when we created the Department of Education, how many employees it had, the budget that it had, and look at where it is today, the number of employees, the budget that it has. But what has happened to the standards of education in the United States of America since we created a Department of Education, since we believe that the government, the federal government, has a right to come up with education policies? And if you're not paying attention to this thing called Common Core, be very aware, be very leery, be very concerned, because one of the tenets of the Communist Manifesto is to have state control of education. And when you have Washington, D.C. and a bureaucracy like the Department of Education saying that there are going to be common standards all across the United States of America for educating our children. You know, one of the things that surprised me in Common Core, how can you teach the Gettysburg Address without teaching the Civil War? But that's part of Common Core. It's revisionist history. The children here in Colorado are different from the children in Florida, different from the children in Georgia, different from the children in Texas. That's why we have local school boards. But if we get away from understanding that basic principle of limited government, so that all of a sudden the new policies that are emanating out of Washington, D.C. are an expansion of government, then look what happens. 9/11 was a tragic event. But if you look at 9/11, we have a government agency already established, the Department of Defense. Inside the Department of Defense, you have the United States Northern Command, which is headquartered just right down the road in Colorado Springs. But instead, we decided we needed a new government agency called Homeland Security. Why? We have got to get back to understanding what limited government means. We have to get back to understanding the policies that support that. Because as government grows bigger and bigger, then that ties into the second principle. That's fiscal responsibility. And this is what Jefferson also said about fiscal responsibility. He said, a wise and frugal government which shall restrain men from injuring one another, which shall leave them otherwise free to regulate their own pursuits of industry and improvement, and shall not take away from the mouth of labor the bread it has earned. This is the sum of good government. If government is not limited, then government is growing. And as government is growing, that means who supplies the resources for government to grow. And if government is growing, the next thing you know, you look around and you're in debt, almost $18 trillion. You look around and you see that you have these expansive deficits, yearly deficits, that go from 1.4 trillion, 1.29 trillion, 1.3 trillion. Now, some people will say that the deficits now are cut in half. You know, they're down to $700 or $800 billion. A lot of people talk about the high deficits of the Bush administration. The highest deficit of the Bush administration was in his last year in 2008, when Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid were running the House and the Senate. And that deficit was $458 billion. So do not be fooled. We still do not have a fiscally responsible government. And if you don't have a fiscally responsible government, what are the policies that emanate from that? The policies that you hear: tax the rich, income inequality, fairness, fair share, because the bottom line is, as Jefferson said, You shall not take away from the mouth of labor the bread it has earned. That is exactly what is happening in the United States of America. That is exactly what is happening when you look around and understand that 100 years ago, the personal income tax was started. And 100 years ago, the top marginal tax rate for the personal income tax was 7%. Today, it is 39.6%. But it's not just that tax rate. It is the capital gains tax. It is the dividends tax. It's the death tax. It is your locals taxes, your state taxes, your property taxes. So we are taken away from the producers, and we're given to agencies that continue to grow and continue to be fiscally irresponsible. If we do not have policies that turn this around, then what is the motivation? What is the incentive for people to go out and work hard when they know that more and more of their resources are going to be taken away from them? We have to talk to people about why it is important for the government to be limited in its scope and to be fiscally responsible, because it is all about the betterment for your lives and what you can do for your children and for your grandchildren, what you can do for your future, what you can do in growing and expanding your businesses. And see, if the government is limited, if it is fiscally responsible, then it comes to the third point. I'm going to kind of change Jennifer's words a little bit, and I'm going to talk about individual sovereignty. And this is what a great man said about individual sovereignty. He said, "We the people are the righteous masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who pervert the Constitution." That was Abraham Lincoln. And then you have these great words. The United States Constitution doesn't guarantee happiness, only the pursuit of it. You have to catch it yourself. Benjamin Franklin. But see, when government is not limited, it tends to be expansive. When government is not fiscally responsible, then just the same as John and I had in our conversation after he tried to kill me going up that mountain today, government then says that it can guarantee your happiness. They cannot do that. You, as an individual sovereign person in the United States of America, the greatest nation that the world has never known, a nation that establishes you as the preeminent entity here in these borders, you are the one that determines your happiness. But if you don't have a government that gives you the opportunity to do that, if you have a government that takes away those opportunities of an opportunity society and creates a dependency society, look at what is happening. Look at the policies where we tell people that they cannot determine their future. Look at the rise of poverty in the United States of America. Look at the rise of people on food stamps. I give you this challenge. Go out to Denver, go to any of these major cities and look for these three initials, EBT, Electronic Benefits Transfer. And think about where those electronic benefits transfer cards are accepted. People don't have to go and get food stamps anymore. They can get a debit card from the federal government. And as a matter of fact, the federal government was using American taxpayer dollars to advertise in Mexico for people to come here and get electronic benefits transfer cards. What does that have to do with individual sovereignty? You know, my neighborhood that I grew up in used to be a proud neighborhood. I grew up and went to school right across the street from Ebenezer Baptist Church. Every day I went past that church. Every day I saw Dr. Martin Luther King's Jr. tomb. And every day my parents taught me about how great this country was, the opportunities it affords to the individual. And that's what we try to teach our daughters. But if you have a government that has principles that is contrary to that, a government that believes in the expansion and the creation of a welfare nanny state, you don't have an indomitable spirit. You don't have individual sovereignty. Ask yourselves, when you drive home tonight, do we have an America that could go out across the Mississippi River and establish towns like Steamboat Springs or like Hans Peak or like Columbine? Do we still have that ruggedness within our individualism? Or have we now become so dependent upon who's going to give it to me? Where do I go to get it? How many more victims are we going to create? If we do not have policies that understand the principle of individual sovereignty, if we do not have policies that allow the indomitable entrepreneurial spirit of the American citizen to grow, then the days of this great constitutional republic are soon to be gone. And if that be the case, if we don't have individual sovereignty, then how can we then understand what the free market and the free enterprise system is? Because that's what built this country in 237 years. We have men out here and women out here who wear the uniform, and they have been in many different countries. But I will tell you, in 237 years, you think about what this nation has achieved. And it achieved it because there was a sense of government being limited. There was a sense of fiscal responsibility that allowed us to have the resources. There was a sense of individual sovereignty. There was a sense of the free market. Hear these words. The economic miracle that has been the United States was not produced by socialized enterprises, by government union industry cartels, or by centralized economic planning. It was produced by private enterprises in a profit and loss system. And losses, here at least, as important in weeding out failures as profits and fostering successes. But let government succor failures, and we shall be headed for stagnation and decline. We are getting to a point in the United States of America where the simple word profit has become a bad word. But that's who we are. We're getting to the point where government has policies that does exactly what Milton Friedman said in this quote, where we're rewarding failure. How is it that all of a sudden a private sector industry can have bad business practices, nefarious business practices? They can fail, and then they go to the government and say, give us a bailout. American taxpayer dollars. Show me in the Constitution where it says that American taxpayers are supposed to support private enterprise. You know, the great thing about the free market is a creative destruction. Because guess what? We're not riding around in horse and buggies anymore, are we? Someone came up with the idea of a car. We don't have someone going out in the middle of Steamboat Springs and lighting candles so that we can see the streets at night. Someone came up with the light bulb. And unfortunately, the dummies up in Washington, D.C. have now told us we all have to buy a certain type of light bulb. But think about the free market system that rewards people for their ingenuity, for their innovation, for their investment. True, we have to have certain types of regulations to make sure that there is a level playing field. But when we go from truly a free market enterprise to a government-driven economy, which is what we have in the United States of America right now. Everyone celebrates the Dow Jones and how great the Dow Jones is right now. But if you stop printing $85 billion per month, what do you think is going to happen to the Dow Jones Industrial Average? So do we really have a free market economy, or do we have an artificial economy? Do we have the Potemkin village of Catherine the Great that is out there? Or are we rewarding Americans to go out and start businesses? In the initial public offerings, we are getting further away from a free market system. And as he says, when we start to succor failures, then what are we saying in the free market system? It is about winning and losing. It is about going out and having the best practices. But if you can pull back and ask for the government to come in with taxpayer money, then you're not going to be fiscally responsible. Then you're taking away from the individual their sovereignty. Then your expanding government is no longer limited. The last principle is probably the most important one. We can have a government that's limited. We can have fiscal responsibility. We can have individual sovereignty, and we can even have the free market system working together. But if we don't have the strong national defense that protects the fundamentals of this great nation, then we will not have a nation for very long. And it hurts me to my core when I know that there are people in Washington, D.C. that will look at my brothers and sisters who have served in uniform and said, because you can still get out there and work, you just don't need that cost of living allowance. But yet, those same individuals, all it takes for them is 5 years to get a 70 to 75% retirement for the rest of their lives. And even if they pass away, that retirement passes on to their surviving spouse. How upside down have we gotten to believe that the men and women who stand on freedom's frontier, who have stood out on the ramparts to protect our freedoms and liberties, are less important than taking away tax loopholes to illegal immigrants in this country? That was the decision that was made, a decision that was signed. That was the policy. But listen to these words. How could readiness for war in time of peace be safely prohibited unless we could prohibit in like manner the preparations and establishments of every hostile nation? James Madison. Peace through strength, Ronald Reagan. The Constitution says provide for the common defense. See, even John F. Kennedy said the absence of war is not peace. This is a Machiavellian world in which we live, and someone is always looking for their opportunity. But unfortunately, in the United States of America, we continue to believe that the military can be the bill payer for the fiscal irresponsibility of Washington, D.C. You don't believe me? What happened after World War I? We cut our military. And what came after World War I? World War II. What happened after World War II? We cut our military. And what came after World War II? Korea. How many people know that General MacArthur wanted to do the Incheon landing, and it had to be delayed because the United States of America did not have enough Marines and amphibious assault craft in 1950 to conduct that amphibious assault. 5 years after what we had accomplished in the Pacific Theater, we had cut our resources and capability. And here we are today. General Ray Odierno, who I served with as my division commander in the 4th Infantry Division, Chief of Staff of the Army 2.5 months ago said, the United States Army has not been training for the past 6 months, and we only have 2 combat-ready trained brigades. That's 7,000 troops, ladies and gentlemen. The United States Marine Corps is about to go down to 174,000. That's the smallest the Marine Corps has been since World War I, and they may take it down below 174,000. The basic core of the United States Marine Corps is the Combat Infantry Battalion. Right now they have 27. They're going to take it down to 21. The United States Navy, when I was serving on active duty, had plus 500 naval warships. They're talking about taking it down to 230. Now, last time I checked, the ocean hadn't shrunk. And the United States Air Force, 1/3 of it has been grounded. And pilots are even turning down 6-figure bonuses. The only thing that patrols, the only military presence we have in the Southern Hemisphere is the Coast Guard and Coast Guard cutters. This is the most powerful nation in the world. And we are enticing, we are emboldening our enemies by saying that we don't care about our national security and national defense. Every dollar in Washington, D.C. is not equal. The preeminent responsibility of this government is to protect the American people, the sea lanes of commerce, and our allies who depend upon us. But right now, our allies don't believe in us. Egypt, who used to be the ally of the United States of America, the most populous Arab nation, is now talking with Russia and promising Russia a naval base. Saudi Arabia and Israel are starting to work together because they don't believe that we have our heads screwed on right when it comes to dealing with Iran. China is incredibly expanding their reach in the Pacific. Japan is concerned, the Philippines is concerned, Vietnam is concerned. China is also the country that holds about 27 to 28% of our debt as well. Ladies and gentlemen, these are very critical times. If we don't understand our founding principles and values, if we don't start getting engaged and understand the right type of policies, if we don't have individuals that will courageously stand up and say that the United States of America and this government is going in the wrong direction, nationalizing more of our production. It is making more people dependent. It is trying to create some type of social egalitarianism and utopianism. And it is also trying to take us away from our Judeo-Christian faith heritage. Those policies you see every single day. Now, people will say, hey, Colonel, we got it. You're talking to the choir. What are we going to do? You need to go out and sing solo. You need to go out and find 5 people that don't agree and see things as you do. And you need to get 3 of those 5. That's 60%. At the University of Tennessee, where I went to school, that was a passing grade. Nah, I'm just kidding. And we'll be back in football. All you people, don't worry. We got the 2nd best recruiting class, so we'll be back. But 60%. Get 60% of your friends that don't see this country in the right direction. Get them to understand what the right direction is. Because why? Because we cannot look at ourselves in the mirror and say that we gave up on our children. Let me tell you what America really means to me. On Tuesday, when I drove in with John, coming across Rabbit Ear Pass, came down to the Yampa River Valley, I looked up there on the mountain. I saw this building up there, and I saw this little gondola thing going up to it. And I said, "What's that?" He said, "That's Thunderhead Peak." I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Well, you know what? Before I leave here, I'm going to go up there, and I'm going to ski down." I had not been on skis in 25 years. My daughters looked at me and said, "Dad, you're crazy." And John said, "Okay, all right." But see, that's America. Americans look at the highest point, and they say, "We're going to get there." So that when Heather and I went up that gondola on the day after Christmas, I skied down it. Because America makes victors, not victims. So this young man, young black kid from the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia, stood up on Thunderhead Peak and looked down across this beautiful venue that you call home, Steamboat Springs. That doesn't happen anywhere but in the United States of America. That doesn't happen unless we believe in our founding principles, just the same as my parents did, born and raised in hard times in South Georgia in 1920 and 1931. They could have easily taught me that because you're black, you can't achieve. Because you're black, you will never be able to go past this neighborhood. They said that you can have any opportunity you want in this country as long as you believe in yourself, you educate yourself, and you get out and you fight for it. That's the message that each and every one of you need to understand tonight. To take these principles, turn it into policies. Because I don't think anyone in this great nation wants to be a failure. But doggone it, we got people in Washington, D.C., and maybe people in the state houses that are telling people that they're going to be failures for the rest of their lives. That's not the American dream. That's not the legacy that we pass on. That's not the legacy that was passed on to us. It's time, as we say in the military, to ruck up and get to fighting for this great nation. Turn principles into policies and take this message out all across Steamboat Springs, Colorado, the Western region, and the United States of America. May God bless you all, and thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Now comes the fun part.
Okay. Dr. Angela Graham West is a former university professor who made the journey from left to right and is an outspoken proponent of freedom and liberty. She's a financial advisor with Raymond James and Associates and was previously an assistant professor at Kansas State University, where she earned her PhD. Her hobbies include writing her personal blog, Republican Coffee Corner with Angela, which I highly recommend, by the way. Lieutenant Colonel West and Dr. Graham West are the proud parents of two grown daughters, Aubrey and Austin, who are with us here tonight, as well as their friend Lynn, visiting from China. And I also will point out, Colonel and Mrs. West celebrated their 24th wedding anniversary on Christmas Eve right here in Steamboat Springs. And the moderator of our discussion this evening is someone whom I'm proud to call my friend, my fellow leadership program of the Rockies class member. Krista Kafer is the executive director of the Colorado's Future Project. Krista is also a senior fellow with the Independence Institute over in Denver, good friends of the Steamboat Institute, as many of you know. Krista was also a former senior expert on education policy for the Heritage Foundation. Krista also has a talk radio show on KNUS AM 710 in Denver, and she's a contributing editor to A Line of Sight, which is the very popular and very highly read e-magazine published by former Congressman Bob Beaupre, which I also highly recommend. And now I will turn it over to Krista.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to do this a little differently. We're going to sit in these chairs. So it's sort of like, I feel like I'm on television, like one of those famous chat shows. You know, we've got...
You're not going to be like The View, are you?
No, thank goodness, no. That'd be creepy, huh? Like a giant hook would come out and drag me off the stage. But so there's going to be some note cards, and if you've got questions for either of our guests, you can write them down, and then I will be asking you those questions. But I'm going to start off as moderator's privilege to ask you a couple of questions. And I got the chance to sit with you at your table, and I got to get to know you a little bit. And I can't believe what a beautiful couple you are. I just think you're...
Don't call me beautiful. I mean, someone's taping this.
Someone's taping this. But what I see a strong man and a strong woman, both of you are very successful, but it's obvious that you put your marriage first. You've got two beautiful daughters. You've got an exchange student with you. And I just want to say, just briefly, and just how do you put each other first? How do you honor each other? Because it's pretty obvious, just being around you.
I do what I'm told.
We both have our, one of the things that I tried to do when we got married was the fact that we wanted to maintain our individuality. You know, we have our interests, we have very strong interests, and we are very involved, not only with the kids and their schooling, but also with our own. Alan does everything, all the boy stuff. He dives, he skydives, he runs, he jumps, and everything. And I'm more into the arts and so forth. So we complement each other in that way. Do you have any?
No, it is true. It's about a balance. And, you know, the thing is, just the same as in the Bible, you have to understand what the other's strengths and weaknesses are, and you complement those weaknesses, and I think that's where we've been successful. And again, the story of Alan and Angela West is an American story. You know, her dad, a Jamaican immigrant who came here to the United States of America and joined the United States military and 2 tours in Vietnam. My father, who served in World War II, my mother, who worked with the Marine Corps headquarters in Atlanta. So, you know, we were just taught about a sense of commitment and devotion to this country because we saw it in our parents, and we were just brought up in the right manner. And we try to bring that also now to our children as well.
I know that was probably the last question you expected me to ask you. And the reason I asked it is because even if you never spoke a word on stage again, the way you honor each other does an enormous good for this country, given the fact that, I mean, the divorce rate is about 50%. And when couples do the hard work of staying together and of raising a family, it's a truly beautiful thing.
Well, I go from year to year, so I just got my contract renewed, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Now I want to ask you a little bit about education. So you've got 2 master's degrees, and you've got a PhD. You've got a daughter that's going to be entering higher ed, Aubrey, I think in about a year, maybe? When are you going to college?
No, I'm already in college.
You're already in college, so then Austin, you're next. And you've got, and Lynn's next. Okay, so you'll have basically 3 in school. You've got plenty of experience teaching. You've been on a board. And you've talked a little bit about, in your speech, about Common Core and your concerns. I bring this up because I'm finishing my master's, and all of the liberalism I was warned about, I thought they were just kind of exaggerating a little bit. They actually were Marxists because they told me they were Marxists. Like it was a pride thing among the professors to be Marxist. So I want each of you to comment a little bit about education and about your experience, and then also kind of what you want your kids to experience when they're in college.
Well, you know, in Proverbs it says, train up a child in the way they should go, and when they are older they will not depart from it. So it's very important that we inculcate those values and those principles into our children so that when they get out and they get into these classrooms and they have these conflicting values and principles, they can stand firm in that. So, you know, it is important, not just the formal education, but the informal education as well. And I think that, you know, having parents that stress education, that lets them know that that is the key, that is the equalizer. You know, I will tell you, I don't like affirmative action. Because what affirmative action says to someone like me is that you can't achieve like everyone else. So we have to lower the standard so that you can, you know, be successful. That to me is the most racist policy. It is insulting, it's offensive. And as we talk to our daughters who are African American and they are female, we tell them, Look, I know you guys think you're from Jamaica because your mom's from Jamaica. You're American, okay? I don't care if you cheer for the Jamaican track team, you're American. Okay? All right? But I don't want them to ever feel that they're a second-class citizen. And that comes from the home. Letting them know, like I said, they will never be victims. They will always be victors. And education is the important part of that.
I was an assistant professor, so I was right there, and I know what you're talking about. It is a very liberal environment. In fact, I think at Kansas State, we used to joke in Bluemont Hall, we had the conservative table. Okay, there was one table. And so, you know, with Aubrey, for example, she went to speak to one of her professors, and she was told that she should not tell anyone who her parents were.
Really?
Yeah, because they will use it against you. She has had situations, in particular one where she wrote about her views on abortion, and I believe she got a low C, and it was there was nothing that she could do to make that grade any better. And I looked at the content was good. She backed up her premise, but the point was it did not conform to what the professor thought she should have been writing. We fight this battle every day, and I think we're probably always going to fight this battle. So we have to teach our children, be strong in their conviction, and not to be afraid to speak out. And I'm very clear on that. I always tell them that they put their pants on one leg at a time, just like anybody else. And so it is necessary that they speak their mind and they be strong in their conviction.
Amen. You know, as we were talking, I found out you and I have something in common. You know, 20 plus years ago, if you've seen me with my short platinum blonde hair, not that you had platinum blonde hair, but
I did try that, by the way. Yeah.
I was a total liberal back then, and obviously became a total conservative, and you were on that same journey. How did it happen?
Well, if you...
She had to marry me.
Well, I was, even when I met Alan, if you read about it, it's in American Thinker. It's a journey from the left to the right. There was a way that liberalism, I guess, used to be. You know, you do your thing, I do my thing, and then, you know, we'll just get along or we just agree to disagree. Well, that's not the way it is now. Now it's totalitarianism. It's like, you gotta believe the way I believe, or I'm going to hurt you. You know, I'll mess up your education, your career, whatever it is. It changed over time, and also it doesn't work. Jamaica is where I'm from. It's a mess. The girls are nodding their head in full agreement. I took them back and we lived in Jamaica the way Jamaicans live, not at an all-inclusive, and they were appalled, to say the least. Everything is inconvenient because everything is in short supply because no one wants to work.
Yeah, I think failure speaks for itself.
Exactly.
And socialism is a failure.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you a question. Earlier this year, I visited the DMZ, the demilitarized zone between South Korea and North Korea. Having been stationed there, how did that have an effect on you, looking over that fence on a daily basis?
Well, I'll tell you what really had an effect on me. My first tour of duty was down in Vicenza, Italy, where the good chief warrant officer spent some time in 173rd. And back then we had the opportunity to go to Berlin and train with the Berlin Brigade. And the first time I was able to go through Checkpoint Charlie to East Berlin, I saw that there was a different way of life. I saw what it meant to be free and to not be free. And you understood that there was good and evil in the world. And so, you know, when Ronald Reagan stood and said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, that was a very significant moment for many of us who understood what that wall represented. And so we have to have people that are able to talk about, you know, these Stalinist regimes, these Islamic totalitarian regimes, that are really, totally against, the basic things that we love about our lives, liberty and freedom and the ability to express ourselves and the ability for the individual to be successful. And unfortunately, it seems that for whatever reason, some of these thought processes and ideologies have come to the United States of America. When you look across the world, they've never been successful anywhere. And Thomas Sowell said that we have traded in that which works for that which sounds good. And we've got to be very careful about that. And that's part of the education process. That's part of us talking to our children and grandchildren to say, it may sound good that, you're going to get free health care and you're going to get free education. And this is the things that, the Castros of the world, the Russia, they have promised that. The North Korea's promised this. But in the end, it is nothing but shared misery, as Winston Churchill said. And also, it's the same as Margaret Thatcher said, socialism works very well until you run out of other people's money. And eventually, the producers stop producing, and those people that are sitting around waiting for the extension of unemployment benefits that used to be 26 weeks are now 99 weeks, that's not going to happen anymore. So I saw what it meant to not be free when I was at the DMZ, when I was over in East Berlin, and that made me stand up and fight even stronger.
Well, we've got some great questions that have come in, so I'd like you to each answer this question. Is there a civil war brewing in the Republican Party, and if so, how do we hit it off?
Yeah, there is a circular firing squad that is going on in the Republican Party. There's no doubt about it. But I will tell you also, the less publicized fight is the fight that's going on in the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party is trying to move really to the progressive socialist far left. I don't think Hillary Clinton is the big threat. I think Elizabeth Warren is really the big threat. But here in our party, the Republican Party has to stop reading the New York Times and the Washington Post and all of these other liberal newspaper outlets that are telling us what we need to do to win. And then we listen to them. And then we run candidates that are just a lesser version of the other side. The important thing is that we have to create a clear delineation between who we are, our philosophy, our principles, our policies, and how they're going to promote the betterment of every American. I mean, the black community in essence is a conservative community. The Hispanic community is a conservative community. We just don't talk to them in those terms. So I am concerned that this little circular firing squad that we have in the Republican Party between an establishment that is really based and rooted within the DC Beltway is totally different from the mainstream of America. And we have got to connect with the mainstream of America, as Ronald Reagan did, as opposed to Jimmy Carter and his malaise. We've got to create that delineation. So yeah, there's a little bit of look, I got redistricted out of my district by Republicans in Florida. And they own the state house, they own the state senate, and we had a Republican in the governor's mansion. So why would you take the first black Republican in the state of Florida since Reconstruction and redistrict him out?
That's a very good question.
Well, the way I see it is, yes, there is a big civil war going on there. But, it's the establishment group, and then you have the Tea Party or the conservatives and the conservatives and so forth. If you look at there was just a headline with the Chamber of Commerce, and they're going to spend $50 million to defeat any Tea Party candidate. And of course, then you have Karl Rove and his group, and they want basically to annihilate the Tea Party. But you know what I get concerned with is the fact that the Tea Party and the conservative groups, they actually are, that would be the majority of the Republican Party. So if you're, it's like you're the head and you're trying to kill the rest of your body. Eventually, you'll end your existence. I'm looking into this a little bit further because I don't know what the end state idea is here. Obviously they're not stupid, to know that people are not going to come out and vote. And they run candidates that, for example, who did they interview? That, you know, they're saying that Christie is getting the lion's share of all of the polling. I don't know. You know, no one that I know was contacted for that poll, but they have the top three. And it's the top three. You go to conventions and so forth, and these people cannot get a crowd to cheer for them or clap for them, except their inner circle. I get concerned over these types of things, and I just would like to, I was talking to Alan before we got here, what is the end state, you know?
When I think about that Ben Franklin quote, if we don't hang together, surely we
We'll
will
hang
hang
separately.
separately.
Exactly.
And that there's got to be a truce, if anything, between the Tea Party.
It's about leadership, though. It is all about leadership. I mean, when you look at the Republican Party, it goes from the center all the way over to the right with, you know, libertarians. It's about leadership and people that can bring all of these, you know, groups together and say, there's a common denominator that we all have. And it's called liberty and freedom. And start talking about that and start talking about, like I said, the policies that get us to come together as a nation and want to have a better and a brighter future for the United States of America. Because if not, and look, I don't want to see us try to have a third party. You have a third party, the other side, they walk right in. So we have got to, you know, sit down at a table and, you know, hash it out and come out and say, this is the direction we're going.
Now, this just leads right into this, that, you know, you've got a great message here tonight, you both do. But how do you get past the choir? Because like it or not, we're the choir. How do you get that message beyond conservatives to hit those 5 friends that might be liberal?
You know, I've been very blessed to have an incredible platform. Since I came out of Congress, my Facebook following has gone from 169,000 to 840,000. On Twitter, I have about, you know, 250,000, and, you know, they're not all the people that agree with me. And, you know, every now and then I check the comments, and it's always so interesting because the people that don't agree with you, they don't argue about policy. They know that they're wrong. They just want to say, you know, just you're stupid, go away, humma humma dee 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 da da da. And really, I'm a paratrooper. You can't hurt my feelings. Okay. I mean, so I don't get it. And if anything, it emboldens me even more. So, you know, when I have the opportunity to go on Fox News and in that little 3 to 5 minute segment, I mean, it gives you another platform. Of course, when you go on O'Reilly, you got 1 sentence. Okay. The big guy's going to talk. Okay. So you get 1 sentence. But, you know, you know, Angela's Republican Coffee Corner, I mean, it's getting out there. The fact that we are here in Steamboat Springs, you know, it's getting out there. And I am just truly humbled to think about, you know, the position that God has put us in, that we can be these voices in this great nation.
Well, there's much been said about the gender gap with a lot of women this last time around and the time before voting for President Obama. With your blog, with the things that you do, obviously you're talking to men and women, but how do we conservative women reach out to women that don't really understand and bring them into the fold?
Well, I actually have a talk show on WRPBI TV, so you can, 7 o'clock church time. I always say they gave me the church hour, but you know, 7 o'clock on Wednesdays. But we had a discussion with young women. I asked a young woman who is a Democrat to come, but I didn't get an answer there. But you know, the gender gap has dropped down to one thing, and it's either abortion or no abortion. You know, they can joke about it, they can talk about it, this war on women. It has nothing to do, you know, because there are so many things where women are being targeted. There is a real war on women. It doesn't happen to be in our society right now, but there is a war on women out there, and no one talks about it. No one talks about honor killings and the other types of things that are going on. They just are, you know, this is a political battle. And it's not a really true argument. I don't see the Republicans holding back women, but it comes down to one central issue with this war on women and the gender gap, and they can hone in on that. The problem is, if we had more women and if we had more diversity, running for office, we would not be the target for this. So some of it is our fault. I mean, believe it or not. So they, you know, there is, it's as if there's a tee and we're the ball and they just keep knocking it out of them.
And it's a lot harder
Yes.
to attack a pro-life woman than it is to attack a pro-life man, I think, from the other side.
Yes.
Now, speaking of the true war on women,
Mhm.
because I'm in the individual market for healthcare, I have my own policy. I got the note saying for now I'm grandfathered in. There's a good chance I'm going to lose my health insurance next year. This question here just really goes to the heart of it. Obamacare is a turning point for our country. It is. It could devastate us.
Yes.
What's next? What do we do?
Well, really, I think that, you know, the left lives in the academic world of theory. And when it comes to practical application and implementation, then you see all of these policies fall apart. The exact same thing. And this is not about a website, it's about the fundamental premise. And the fundamental premise really of Obamacare is a wealth redistribution, and especially for young people. You know, to say that we're going to go after you to subsidize the people who are, you know, indigent, you know, lower income, also the elderly or the more sick. You know, when you look at the sticker shock with these premiums and as well as the deductible prices that are going up, that's all that's happening. Now, you've already had close to 6 million some odd Americans that have been dropped off of their coverage. Wait until the employer mandate kicks in, you know, because they pushed that away. And then you're going to see even more cancellations. Some people are estimating 65 to 70 million. See, I really believe when Angela talks about the end state will come around and it will be, we tried to do this. We tried to work through the private sector. We tried to work with the insurance industry. They're destabilizing the individual insurance industry in the first place because they can't keep up with all these changes and these different iterations. And you want to talk about unconstitutional actions. I mean, the executive branch is supposed to execute law, not, you know, change and amend law. I think it's a single payer system. I mean, when you really look at the numbers, what's signing up, more people are going into Medicaid, which again, this is an expansive growth of government. You're getting away from limited government, which means that here in the state of Colorado, wherever, it's going to be more fiscally irresponsible actions. Your payroll taxes are going to have to go up more to take the cost and subsidize all these people going on Medicaid, but that's what they want. They want to have a single payer system, and they're going to say that this thing is going to have a death spiral, it's going to collapse, and this is what we must move to. This is the seminal issue for the United States of America. You know, we could talk about Benghazi, IRS targeting scandal, whatever, but that cancellation notice was personal. And when people looked at the president and the 34 times that he lied, that was not misspeaking, that was a lie. It was the #1 lie from PolitiFact. It was 3 of the top 5 lies came from the president. You know, we've got some serious issues with integrity from this administration. And it's all because of this. Progressive socialism believes in the ends justify the means. And they believe by any means necessary. And until we get an objective media that will start to hold their feet to the fire, we've got to educate ourselves. But the good thing is that people are starting to say, this was not supposed to happen to me. How many people know Kirsten Powers on Fox News? Kirsten Powers is a liberal. But did y'all see her the day when she came on Fox News? She talked about getting her insurance cancellation notice. And she talked about how she liked her policy. And she couldn't believe that it happened to her. Lights are starting to go on. But now we've got to talk about what are the conservative policy alternatives. The problem that we have is that we've got to stop talking about what we're against, start talking about what we're for. That's how you win people.
I love this question because I think every single person in this room could have asked this question. How do I make a difference in my local community?
How do you make a difference?
Yeah.
You get out and you speak to people outside of your circle. You know, the thing about it is, we talked about, I'm a member of the Palm Beach Republican Executive Committee, and, you know, one of the things we talked about was we like to knock on doors of friends, but we won't go over to, in our neck of the woods, Pearl City is predominantly black, and we won't go over there. We won't even walk in that neighborhood because we're, you know, and if we just did, we would find that we might get a bit more positive responses. That's the thing about the Republicans, at least the ones that I'm dealing with. We're very comfortable talking to each other, but when we get out of our comfort zone, it's hard for us to defend what we really stand for. We get afraid because we are so criticized in the media, and that breeds a great deal of fear.
No, and Chairman, this is the nugget that I will give to you. We should never say the word outreach. I hate the word
Exactly.
outreach. What outreach means is that when it's Black History Month or Hispanic Heritage Month or whatever, Republicans show up for a lunch, they show up for a dinner, they go to a church and they sing hallelujah and they clap and everything, and then they don't see you again until 2 months before the election. What we have to talk about is policy inclusiveness. Let me give you a great example, okay? When Mitt Romney was running for president, this is the one commercial that he could have made that would have devastated the other side. He should have had himself in one of those horrible neighborhoods in Detroit that looked like, World War II. And juxtaposed on the screen, he should have had a picture of what Detroit looked like when his father was governor of Michigan. And he should have said, this is what my father and his policies did for the state of Michigan and Detroit. I'm standing here now in a Detroit that has been under Democrat leadership for 40 some odd years. That's how you take your vision. That's how you take your principles. That's how you start talking about policy. You know where Governor Christie won the support and the endorsement of the Black Ministers Association in New Jersey? And if you want to get black, Reverend, you got to agree with this. You want to get black people on your side, get the ministers on your side. He stood up for school choice. The #1 issue in the black community is school choice. And this is how you frame this argument. See, once upon a time, the Democrat Party stood outside the doors of education institutions and told black children they couldn't come in. Today, the Democrat Party stands inside the doors of these schools, and they tell these children they can't get out. You say that, and you go into these communities, they're done. But you got to say it each and every day. You got to keep going back. Our policies are right. Our policies work. We just got to take them out there.
Well, this is a great one to end with. I just want to know from both of you, when you talk to your daughters and to your Chinese exchange student, how do you describe the American dream?
I describe the American dream to them as being able to do and be whatever it is that they want to be. And I just want them to be something. I want them to dream big. And hope is not a method, but hard work is, and prayer and perseverance. So that's what I tell them. And, it works. It works. My brothers and I grew up in a very small apartment. And every single one of them became something because they were able to dream and work towards it. That's what I tell them.
The Army taught me one simple thing, that you lead by example. And so every day that our girls wake up, they see the American dream in their home. And that should be the inspiration that it was good enough for me and my mother and father, and I think it's good enough for them. And that's how each and every one of us will make a difference, by being that living example each and every day to our children and grandchildren, but not just them, but their friends and their outside relatives and what have you. So that's how we turn this country around.
Well, I hope I haven't been too much like The View. Is that all right?
No, yeah, you much better enjoy Bayhawk.
All right. Okay, I'm relieved. Well, I tell you, Angela and Alan, you're an inspiration to me, and so let's give them an applause.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Okay.